All right, good morning. Well, we've been really set up very well because today is the second installment in my series on the Wizard of Oz. Yes, so my topic this morning is So You've Made an Enemy. So Dorothy and all of the characters in the Wizard of Oz, I believe, like any great myth, all of these characters exist within us. All right, so I just wonder if you have a favorite character in the story, if there's somebody in the story that you feel like you really relate to, maybe Dorothy, maybe somebody else. But Dorothy has embarked on what we call the hero's journey, that there has been within her for some time as a young teenage girl, there is this divine discontent. You know, she lives on the farm with Auntie Em and Uncle Henry, and she's just not satisfied. Now that actually is a really good thing spiritually, when there is that divine discontent, because it seems like what happens is we grow at some point to a place where there's enough light in our individual soul where we can really get, there's something greater for me. There is more for me and I should have it. There's a greater experience of life for me. If I stay here on the farm, I'm not going to experience that, so I've got to set out to experience this journey here. So poor young Dorothy, you know, she's not really living fully, and I think that probably all of us at some point, sometime or another, we can relate to that. Dorothy does not know that she is in a universe of cause and effect, you know. Now, God does not punish. We teach that, but there are consequences for how we show up. There are consequences for how we participate in our own life, and particularly for how we show up on a consistent basis, for how we participate consistently, because that sets law in motion, which we call cause and effect. So Dorothy, young Dorothy, I think she's not really committed to her own life, and I think probably also we have all had days, weeks, months, or even longer, where we didn't feel real committed to our own life here. So Dorothy sets a powerful intention that we've just heard in song to go over the rainbow. She wants to be in that place where there's no trouble, and who among us has not prayed that prayer? Right? You know, if I could just be in that place where there's no trouble. So Dorothy has set this very powerful intention. You know, but this is also a great reminder to us to watch what you pray for, because you might, in fact, get it. You know, because sometimes we say, wow, I didn't know it was going to be like that. Well, this is what you asked for. This is what you put out into the universe. This is what you kept saying you wanted. So Dorothy, let me just go back to our story. So if you were not here last week, I'll catch you up quickly. Dorothy is in conflict with Miss Elvira Gulch. And Miss Gulch, yeah. she is a very powerful lady. She owns half the county. And the problem is that when Dorothy's walking home from school, her little dog Toto goes into Mrs. Gulch's garden, chases Mrs. Gulch's cat regularly. And so Miss Gulch comes with a letter from the sheriff, and she takes the dog. But the dog escapes, and Dorothy decides the thing to do is run away. Who among us has not felt at some point that that is the answer? Yes, I know what to do. I will just run away from my life and get a fresh start. Now, just quickly into her runaway, Dorothy meets Professor Marvel, who is a fortune teller, and he reminds her that she is very much loved. And so the twister is coming, a tornado, and she decides to run home. But now, by the time she gets there, the family and the farm workers, they've all gone into the cyclone cellar, and she's locked out. So here I get to ask us, you know, maybe we have a twister in our life, you know, but the thing is, if we have something out here that seems to be creating chaos or turmoil for us, is upsetting to us, be very, very clear that the science of mind teaches us that by the time it shows up out here, it's cooked in consciousness for quite a while, that everything starts within. We teach that cause is within. All right? So Dorothy's twister out here was actually her discontent for a long time inside. You say, well, how did she create that? Well, just with her thoughts, with her beliefs, her dissatisfaction. So Dorothy's unhappiness, her unfulfillment, manifests as this twister or this cyclone. Now, something big is happening. She's locked out of the storm cellar. She gets knocked unconscious. And the twister picks up Dorothy's house, and the house is a great metaphor for our consciousness, always. Our house is our consciousness, and Dorothy's little house lands in Munchkin Land, very unfamiliar territory. She steps out of the house into wonderful Technicolor, a spectacular moment, if you were a little person watching this movie, wondering, how did this happen to me? And again, we've all done that. You know, how did I get here? How on earth did this ever happen? How did these results show up in my life? You know, who are these people anyway? And such little people. So Dorothy's conscious mind and her unconscious mind have worked together, right? There has clearly been an agreement, because Ernest says to have a demonstration, there has to be both conscious and subjective agreement. Our conscious mind and our subjective mind have to be in agreement, not only that we believe it with what we're saying to ourselves, but deep down we believe it, because that's how something demonstrates, with both conscious and subjective agreement. So everyone, I think, has dreamed of a fresh start. But you know, what Dorothy does not realize, because she's young on her journey, is that she takes her with her everywhere she goes. So all of those things that she sought to avoid or escape from, they are in that little basket she's carrying with her. She brought it all along for the ride. Now, Dorothy spoke her word when she sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." And you know, the thing about that is that our words have power. It became so for her, you know, because she said, and Ernest Holmes teaches us that especially when we bring feeling, when we can get the feeling in our prayer, you know, that makes the prayer that much more powerful. You know, so we've all probably done this in some way or another, you know, where we get a hold of an idea, not an empowering idea, you know, nobody loves me, nobody wants my gift, nobody values what I have to contribute, something like that, on and on and on. And we do that with a lot of feeling, like Dorothy did, and the universe absolutely support that. Now, God doesn't run out when it comes to any of us, because God is infinite in God's nature. But people often have such faith in the negative. You know, the negative in life, the negative about themselves, rather than belief in the Spirit of God within them. And so the principle is that it's done unto us as we believe. You know, God's not going to argue with you. If you don't believe well or think highly of yourself, the universe says, well, interesting choice. Okay, I guess that's what you want to manifest. You know, the universe is never going to argue with us about that. So Dorothy got what she wished for, prayed for, and she's over the rainbow. But again, all her stuff comes with her. Now, in your life, in my life, or an aspect of our life, if there is some part of our life that's in chaos, you know, and we want a bigger, greater expression of life, if we don't handle the chaos first, there will just be more chaos. Right? So people will often say, oh, you know, if I just had some more money, that would solve my problem. But if you're financially in chaos right now, you know, if you're not organized about it, if you don't know what you have and where it is, then you get more money, you're just going to be in bigger chaos. Do you understand how this works? Because that's spiritual principle. Now, we are going to wake up. At some point, we're going to wake up. And our hope is that, unlike Dorothy, we don't have to be hit by a shutter coming off the house and knock us unconscious to get our attention. Although I certainly feel like I myself have been hit with a number of shutters over the years. So Dorothy, now when she drops her house, it happens to be on the Wicked Witch of the East. And now, like I said, the house is a state of consciousness. And so the Wicked Witch of the East was terrifying the Munchkins in Munchkin Land. So it's actually good for everyone that the house has landed on the Wicked Witch of the East, right up until her sister, the Wicked Witch of the West, shows up. Right? And she says, who kills my sister? Dorothy said, well, I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Now, if Dorothy wasn't steering the house, who was? It wasn't Toto, you know? That this is, again, so this is why it's important to know that the house is a metaphor for Dorothy's consciousness. Am I going to like where this is going? You know? Are we dropping our house on anyone, or does it feel like someone may be dropping their house on us? So Dorothy was not aware of her own divinity. How do I know that? When we're aware of our divinity, when we are aware of the presence, the power, the love of God that is within us, we have no need to drop a house on anybody else. We have no need to say or do anything that is less than absolutely loving, right? So Dorothy is like the light in us, right? And so the light is always a threat to the darkness. Now, Dorothy has made an enemy, but she has divine protection. We teach that the presence of God is always, always with us. The presence of God is always within us. The outer symbol of Dorothy's protection is her ruby slippers, right? And so Glinda, the good witch, add another witch to the equation, shows up and she says, never let the ruby slippers off your feet, or you will be at the mercy of the wicked witch, right? So it's like she's saying, never forget God within you, or you will be at the mercy of all around you. Never forget the power, the presence, the principle exists within you, or you're going to be at the effect of everything in the changing world around you. This is what Science of Mind, this is what New Thought teaches us. So, remember, the Wicked Witch of the West wants the ruby slippers because she wants what Dorothy has. She wants the power, the resources that Dorothy has within her. Now, the world around us wants us to forget our divine connection, I believe. You know, because it's almost like if you're aware of your divine connection, it's upsetting to people who are not. If you're aware of the presence of God within you, it kind of irritates people who don't believe that. In other words, if you're really alive, all of the people in your life who are dead are going to be really annoyed with you. Yeah, that's just what this is like. And Dorothy is actually full of life. She is this young, lovely little expression of God. So Dorothy landing, you know, is on the Witch of the East is a bad thing. But you know, I was thinking about this week and I thought, this is really proof of the devil you don't know is often worse than the one you do. Right? So we know that the Wicked Witch of the East was bad, but it got a lot worse when the Wicked Witch of the West shows up, right? So the witch puts Dorothy in difficult situations. Now, Dorothy has to reach deep within herself to deal with these challenges. She goes deep to pull forward these spiritual resources that she hasn't been using up until now. Now, just because she hasn't been using them doesn't mean that they did not exist within her. Right? The Bible says, they meant it for my harm, but God used it for my good. Now, I think that's a really interesting thing because so often we're faced with something where somebody intentionally intends to do us harm, but you know, God has an infinite capacity to somehow turn that around and inside out, and it can actually be for our good. And we think, oh, I don't know how that could possibly. It's not our job to know how. It's just our job to know the promise. And the promise is somebody can intend you harm, and God has a way to turn it into using it for your good. So getting to Oz, because she's in Munchkin Land, getting to Oz is her short-term goal. Got to get to Oz, got to get some help. Yeah, give it to us. But her big goal is to get back to Kansas and be different than she was before. See, isn't it interesting that Dorothy has lost what's dear to her, but she doesn't know how dear it is until she's lost it. Right? And so I think that's part of the message here, is for us to be aware of what's really important, where the love is in our life, you know. Otherwise, it could be frittered away. So let me say, and I understand this, if there's anybody here, not all witches are bad. I get it, okay? So you don't have to tell me about that after. Mm-hmm. So what keeps us from living fully, or what keeps us living at something less than 100%? You know, it might be something that we tell ourselves. You know, we might think that it's the boss, or our partner, or our level of resources, or our education. You know, but the truth is, it is not outside of us. It never is. It's not what other people say, but what we actually believe, right? We make the reason we can't live fully, or we make the reason we can't love fully, and we say, well, we've got a witch, you know? But it is never external power, Science of Mind teaches us. God within is the power, and the truth of God is the truth that exists within each and every one of us, even if it's only in potential within us, waiting to be brought forward. Right? So ask, what keeps me from living fully? Ask yourself, what keeps me living from at some level that is less than 100%? You know, how alive, how loving, how fulfilled would we be without the so-called enemies or the witches that are maybe our excuse for playing small, with our excuse for holding back, our excuse for not having a big open heart here. So I want to make peace with my enemies so they no longer have power in my life. You know, 500 years before Jesus came on the planet, Buddha gave this teaching. He said, to bless your enemy, for he allows you to grow. Ooh, God, how often do we not want to do that? You know, oh, good, I have a challenge. Oh, look at this. This is going to be difficult. An obstacle, yippee, right? You know, no, we don't do that. But he says, bless your enemy, for he allows you to grow. How can that be, right? Because, well, you don't want to let the witch always take your joy. And I think what the Buddha is saying, is, you know, what he's pointing to is, hey, you have the answer within you. You have the answer within you. If you will look within, if you will turn deeply within to your divine nature, you will find that everything you need is right there. So often for us, the witch is some form of fear, right? Oh my God, I can't, you know, fear of being not enough, or fear of what other people will think, or fear of where am I going to get the money? You know, I've thought about this again and again, and it comes to me that the two biggest excuses people have for not moving forward with their life is, where am I going to get the money, and what are other people going to think? If we took that off the table completely, where am I going to get the money and what are people going to think? I think people would be 1,000 times more self-expressed and fulfilled in their life than they would if we weren't so concerned about what other people are going to think. Well, the truth is, what other people are going to think is exactly whatever they choose to think. And we are never going to be able to control all of that. So why are we going to let that be a big witch in our life? So maybe the witch in our life doesn't let us participate fully in some way, or doesn't let us love fully as much as we could. You know, it's interesting that Dorothy feels like a victim of externals. And I know we can all relate to that. At different times, we have felt like something outside of us has the power, the authority, the dominion over our life. Something outside of us is in control of whether I get to be happy, or whether I get to be healthy, or whether I get to be prosperous, or whether I get to feel included. But Dorothy, though, if we tell the truth, Dorothy is not happy anywhere, because she's not happy in the present moment. When she has the farm and Annie M and you know, everybody who she loves, when she has them, she's not happy, right? And so now she doesn't have them, and she's not happy. Do we know anybody like this? You know, no matter what you do, they're not happy. Oh boy, good times. Good times, yeah. You know, because Dorothy kind of has this, you know, this disease of someday I'll. Someday I'll. So we want to not get caught on someday I'll. We hope that Dorothy learns from this, just like we hope that we've learned everything we need to learn from all of the difficult or painful experiences we have been through. Because if we've learned something, if we've gotten the wisdom out of the experience, that means we rise to a higher level in consciousness, and we don't have to repeat it again. Thank you, God. So an abundant life, I think, comes from what you give, not from what you take. And my hope for Dorothy, as she continues down her path, is that she will move toward the side of being a giver rather than just being a taker, right? The bigger the life we want to lead, the more we're going to have to deal with, the more responsibility we will have to have. That's not a bad thing, you know? So those things, those old things, like, you know, greed or resentment or anger, that used to be like maybe the real witches for us or some kind of exception, they get in the way of our good. It can be, they can be our enemies, but they don't have to stay our enemies. So I would ask you to think about today, if there's a witch in your life, if you've made an enemy, is what I'm calling it. If there's a witch in your life, if someone has dropped a house on you, or if you are in the process or have recently dropped a house on someone else. And I ask us today, where do I have to let go? Where do I have to make peace? who do I have to make peace with so that I can be healed, so that I can move forward? You know, in the classwork that I teach, often when we're talking about healing, I lead people in a process, and at some point I say, okay, who do you need to forgive? And people often think that forgiveness has nothing to do with their particular healing. They think that that's like a whole separate issue over here. But we teach that it's one life, everything contained within the one life. So if I want to be healed, if I want to move forward, there's probably something I need to let go of. Next week will be our third installment. Won't you join me in prayer? Thanks. So we just turn our attention inward now for a moment, recognizing that we are surrounded and filled with God's power, God's presence, God's peace, and God's love. I know that the place whereon we stand right now is holy ground. So everything we need, I am certain, exists within us, and we open out a way for it to come forward and express fully and completely in our lives. We join in consciousness today, and we speak the word for all of those people that we love, our parents and children and family members, and we affirm that God is right where they are, and that that Spirit of God within them is greater than anything they face in the world. We let our prayer be a blessing in the world in which we live, so that the light and love that's within our hearts, within this sanctuary, emanates out from us to just embrace the entire world and everyone in it. We bless our church. We bless all churches everywhere, synagogues and temples and mosques and ashrams, all paths to God. And I'm certain that we are blessed by being together, that there is raising up for each and every one of us, there is healing, that the path ahead is light, not dark. And so with a full heart, I give thanks that this is the truth. I release this word, and so it is. Together we all say, Amen.